Now, with great pleasure, I will surrender the podium to the chairs, both, I'm sure, well known to all of you. Harold Niman of Niman Siemens Galgut, Stephen Grant of Gowling, Strathey and Henderson. I understand that Harold will open by saying a few words. Please join me in welcoming our chairs.
Thanks, Paul. The material that you have is composed of the pleadings, which are at tab 1. And don't worry too much about the facts. You will find during the course of these videos that the facts change from time to time, and that's just sort of the function of how these videos work. You will also see that there are there's an opening trial statement at tab 2, and that will be the first video that you'll be seeing. And tab 3 is a report from Audrey Joseph. Tab 4 is a report from Wayne Rudson. And tab 5 is Doug Hyatt's report. He's the economist. The way the program's going to be run is that you will see a video of either an examination and a cross-examination or a cross-examination, and then there'll be a brief commentary by the participants in the video, and Justice Jennings, who will provide his observations of what he saw and what was important to him or unimportant or whatever. And that's about it. That's how the program's going to run. So, do you have anything to say, Stephen?
We just to let you know, the tapes vary in length. Some of the tapes, in fairness, were edited. They were edited not particularly because of the content or the style, but mostly for time. We had time constraints in trying to get this program in half an hour. Harold mentioned that some of the facts change from time to time. I suppose that's sort of like real life and real practice. The facts do seem to change from time to time. What we were looking for and what we will be looking for in the context of child support, of a child support problem, are different approaches to advocacy, and so you will see different participants using different styles to try to obtain what they want in the context of a trial. And lastly, I'd like to say that we are really very grateful to have Justice Jennings participate in this. He's just been great in terms of the time that we expended in putting this together, putting the videos together, which was done over the course of 2 days. And I hope that the product that you see in terms of the tape you will appreciate as much as the effort went into it. So with that, if we could roll the first tape, and we'll get going here.
Pamela Doe against Gary Doe. Mr. McInnis for the petitioner, Mr. Epstein QC for the respondent. Mr. McInnis, do you care to open?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Your Honor. You have before you an opening trial statement brief of the petitioner wife, Pamela Doe. And I'd like to just briefly take you through that brief and identify the documents contained therein. At tab 1, you will find our opening trial statement, and at tabs 2 and 3, you'll find the most recent financial statements sworn and filed by the parties. At tab 4, you will find the wife's net family property statement. And at tab 5, you will find the report of Wayne Rudson, who is a valuator, a business valuator retained by the wife. At tab 6, you will find the report of Audrey Joseph, who is a social worker also retained by the wife.
Just let me stop you for a moment. With respect to Mr. Rudson's report, is that going into evidence on consent, or is this something you wish to introduce into evidence later on?
Yes, that report has been served in accordance with the Evidence Act and the Rules of Civil Procedure.
Thank you. Yes, sorry, I interrupted you.
At tab 7, Your Honor, you will see an excerpt from the federal child support tables relating to child support payable for 3 children. And at tab 8 of the brief, you will find a draft divorce judgment which has been prepared in accordance with the relief sought by the wife in this proceeding. If I can begin then, simply by way of background, the wife is presently 45 years of age. The husband is presently 49 years of age. The parties were married on October 19th, 1980 at Cottam, Ontario, and separated 16 and a half years later on April 1, 1997. The children of the marriage are Amanda, who is 18 years of age and will be entering her first year of university in the fall, Jason, who is 14 years of age and in grade 8, and Samantha.
Oh, just a second. Jason's how old?
Jason is 14 years of age.
Yes.
And in grade 8. And Samantha is 9 years of age and in grade 4. If I can turn then to the issues in dispute in this proceeding. And briefly, with respect to the issue of custody and access, it's the wife's position that she should have sole custody of the children, subject to the husband's liberal and generous access to them. There has been no fixed schedule of access. The husband has simply contacted the children when he wished to visit them. The wife is satisfied with these arrangements and wishes to continue with them. She opposes the husband's claim for joint legal and residential custody because she has been the primary caregiver for these children during a lengthy marriage, and the children have a very close and loving relationship with the wife, who has, in fact, made all major decisions for the children during the marriage. With respect to spousal support, Your Honor, the wife has made a claim for $8,000 a month in spousal support. As I stated, the wife will turn 46 years of age this month, and she has not had full-time employment outside the home for almost 19 years. She is seeking indefinite spousal support. The husband, as you will see from Mr. Rudson's report, which I will deal with in more detail later, has an imputed income of $432,981.
I'm sorry, would you give me that number again?
It's $432,981. The wife is relying upon the report of Mr. Rudson with respect to the husband's income. With respect to the issue of child support, which, in my view, Your Honor, is the most difficult issue in this proceeding, the first issue that must be determined by you is the quantification of the husband's income. It is the husband's position that his income from all sources is only $100,000 per year. However, as I stated, the wife relies upon the report of Mr. Rudson, which is at tab 3 of the brief, and takes the position that the husband's income is 4 times that much, and $432,981.
I'm sure we'll get to that, but just for my information now, is that an imputed figure for a particular year, or is that what Rudson will say is his anticipated income for the current year?
That is what Mr. Rudson will say the husband's 1998 income is.
And is the evidence
which is the
going
most
to be
recent
that
information we have, Your Honor.
and is the information going to be that that's typical?
Yes, it is, Your Honor.
Is the evidence going to be? Thank you.
To briefly summarize the evidence that Mr. Rudson will give, Mr. Rudson's evidence will be that the husband has principally 4 sources of income. He has reported income that he reports in his personal income tax returns, and in 1998, that income from self-employment was $195,241, and interest of $864,000. In addition to that, the second source of income is income from barter transactions that the husband enters into, which don't result in cash in his pocket, but result in cash equivalent. And Mr. Rudson has estimated that income to be $7,000. Secondly, with respect to adjustments to the husband's income, Mr. Rudson will give evidence that the husband pays significant personal expenses from his income and deducts these expenses from his income for tax purposes. The three areas of these personal expenses that Mr. Rudson has identified are firstly advertising of $18,199, secondly travel of $34,448, and thirdly membership dues of $20,000. The third source of income that Mr. Rudson identifies is undistributed income from Smith Steel Limited.
Smith
Steel Limited of $99,277. And fourthly, imputed income on an investment portfolio of the husband of $57,952. And the total of all of those various sources of income, Your Honor, is $432,981. And that, Your Honor, is the wife's position with respect to the husband's income. Now, if we turn to tab 7 of the brief, you will see the federal child support tables relevant to 3 children. And we have calculated that a payor earning an income of $432,981 must pay basic monthly support of $6,075. Presently, Your Honor, the husband is paying for 3 children only $2,500 per month, and has been paying that throughout since the date of separation. In addition to the basic monthly child support, Your Honor, the wife is also seeking contribution to various special or extraordinary expenses pursuant to Section 7 of the Child Support Guidelines. And specifically, those expenses are, firstly, for Amanda, her upcoming post-secondary educational costs, which include tuition, residence, books, other school expenses, transportation, and a new computer. Amanda has been accepted and will be attending Queen's University in the fall and will be living away from home. Secondly, for Jason, the wife seeks contribution from the husband for all of his hockey-related expenses. Jason is an exceptional hockey player who has sufficient talent to be considered an NHL prospect. Thirdly, for Samantha, the wife seeks contribution from the husband for all of her ballet-related expenses. Again, she is a very talented child who definitely has the ability to excel in this activity, and these expenses in our submission, Your Honor, are special or extraordinary expenses in accordance with Section 7 of the Child Support Guidelines. Now, in relation to these expenses, Your Honor, the wife relies upon the report of Audrey Joseph, which I've identified at tab 6 of the brief. And if I could just summarize very briefly, Audrey Joseph's evidence, and this report, again, Your Honor, has been served upon the other side in accordance with the Evidence Act and the Rules of Civil Procedure. And Ms. Joseph will be giving evidence at this trial. Ms. Joseph was asked specifically to comment on these special and extraordinary expenses of each of the children. With respect to Amanda's expenses, and the issue really, with respect to Amanda's educational expenses, is whether Amanda should contribute to those expenses. And it's the husband's position that Amanda should work part-time and should contribute to those expenses. The wife takes the position, or initially took the position, that Amanda should not have to contribute to those expenses. It's Ms. Joseph's opinion that Amanda should not be expected to work part-time during the school year, but that her contribution should be limited to those earnings that she's able to make during the summer months while she's not in school. And the wife accepts this position. With respect to Jason's expenses, again, it is Ms. Joseph's opinion that each of the parties should positively reinforce Jason's pursuit of his goal to one day be an NHL hockey player. She takes the same position with respect to Samantha's pursuit of ballet dancing. Ms. Joseph goes further to say that the children's pursuit of these activities will enhance their self-esteem and self-confidence, and that each of the parties should encourage these activities and contribute to them. Now, assuming, Your Honor, that my client is awarded spousal support in the amount that we have sought, that is $8,000 per month, her gross yearly income will be $96,000. And assuming, Your Honor, that the court accepts Mr. Rudson's report and the conclusions that he draws in that report and imputes an income to the husband of $432,981, it is the wife's position that the husband should therefore pay 78% of these special expenses, and that the wife should pay 22% of these expenses. And you will note in paragraph 16 of my statement that I have done the calculation for the court to arrive at those respective percentages. There is another issue with respect to Amanda's support, Your Honor, that I would like to deal with very briefly because you will hear evidence about this, and that is with respect to Amanda living at home, living away from home while she attends university, and whether or not the husband should have to pay the wife support for Amanda during those months that she's away at university. It is the wife's position that the husband should continue paying the basic guideline amount for 3 children, which is $6,075, notwithstanding that one of the children is living away from home for a part of that time to attend university. There are 3 basic reasons that we take that position, Your Honor. The first reason is that the wife will incur additional costs by virtue of the fact that the child, Amanda, is away attending university. There will be extra telephone expenses, there will be clothing costs, there will be pocket money, there will be other personal expenses that would not be required by Amanda if she was still living with her mother year-round. Secondly, there is an onus in our position under the child support guidelines on the husband who is taking the position that the court should determine the amount of child support payable for Amanda in some way other than simply an application of the guidelines. And it is our position, Your Honor, that the husband has not met that onus and will not be able to meet that onus. Thirdly, a significant portion of the wife's child care budget relates to the cost of maintaining a home, which is a cost that she will have 12 months of the year, not simply 4 months of the year or 5 months of the year, while all 3 children are living with her. In order, pursuant to Section 25 of the Child Support Guidelines, that the husband should produce on a yearly basis all financial information provided for in Section 21 of the Child Support Guidelines. Finally, the wife seeks an order that the husband maintain medical, dental, and extended health plan coverage for her and the children for so long as any of them are entitled to be supported by the husband. The witnesses that the wife will call will be the wife, Wayne Rudson, and Audrey Joseph. Those are my opening comments, Your Honor, and I would like to call my first witness.
Thank you, Mr. McInnis. Please call your first witness.
Thank you, sir.
So I thought that was an absolutely perfect opening statement. I'm not just saying that because Paul's here, but Justice Jennings, in Toronto there's a requirement to file a form of opening statement. Is it enough to just file the form, or should you do it orally like Paul just did?
Well, I'm going to begin with a disclaimer because, and I'm not going to say it every time I come on live, what you're going to hear from me is entirely subjective. It's my reaction to what I saw during the taping. I tried to get into the role by pretending I was a real judge and writing things down and reacting to what was happening. And I say that because my comments may differ dramatically from some of the other commentators, and they may very well differ from comments that might have been made by some of my colleagues. They're my reactions to what I saw and heard, and how I reacted to what I saw and heard, and therefore you take those comments to the bank with some caution. Now, going back to the question of the opening, I think that if you fail to take advantage of the opportunity to open a case when invited to do so, you are nuts. The opening gives you an absolutely marvelous opportunity to tell the trier what to expect, to set out a roadmap that the trier will follow if your witnesses behave as you hope they're going to, and to titillate the trier's imagination as to how the case is going to unfold. And if you don't do that, you lose a golden opportunity. I promise not too many war stories, but I'm trying a fraud case at the moment, and it was to go to a jury, so obviously the Crown Attorney had an opening worked out, because that's what you do with juries, as you know. At the last minute, there was a re-election. I invited the Crown to open her case. She said, quote, "No, I think I'll let the witnesses tell the story." And it's taken me 2 days to figure out what the allegations of fraud really are. I mean, she's lost me for 2 days, which is crazy. That's an exaggerated comment, perhaps, but I'm trying to stress how important it is to open. And my fear is that with the requirement now in family law that you file opening trial statements, you may think that that's all you have to do. You're gambling that the judge has read the statement, but even if the judge has read the statement, he or she doesn't get the same impact out of it that you will be able to give the judge if you give a brief outline of your case.
Thank you, Justice Jennings. The next segment will be the examination of the wife by Ricki Harris.
Any comments on the
I'm going to
statement
comment on the one itself.
Okay. Do you want me to comment, or Justice Jennings?
Either.
Justice Jennings.
the reason I gave you the disclaimer was I think that was a very good opening, but there were some things about it that I think when you watch the tape you should have regard to. If anything, it was, in my view, perhaps more than was required to get my interest up in the case. When you watch the tape, watch Paul for the first few moments. He appears to me to be reading, and he failed to follow the absolute cardinal rule of advocacy: watch the judge's pen. Because when I stop writing, I'm ready to receive more information. And a couple of times I had to stop Paul and say, "Pardon me," or get him to go back over the ground, and he would have observed that if he established more eye contact with me. An opening is a conversation. It is not, in my view, a recitation of what's in the printed text. I thought Paul got into some trouble with the income statements because he's banking on his expert's report being accepted in full to establish that income figure. And he's locked himself into an income of $432,000. Now, later in the afternoon, you'll see some real soft spots in that income. It detracts from his opening statement if the witnesses don't bear him out. So in my view, and again, this is personal, much better to say something like, we think that the real income might be as high as $432,000. It may be less, but we think that really is what, on the best day, we can show you it is.
Justice Jennings, if I could interrupt on that point, do you worry then about a counsel trying to oversell? Is that what you're,
Yeah.
is that what you're saying?
Keep it simple. Don't lock yourself into the highest and best position, because if it isn't borne out, you're in trouble. And the last thing I want to say is, in my view, it is maybe improper, but certainly terribly risky to put the opinion statements in the opening trial statement. One of those statements, that's the statement of the witness Joseph, may not be admissible. There may be a strong argument as to whether it should go in. And I would have preferred in the opening Mr. McInnis to make reference to his experts' reports, which he may have filed properly, but that doesn't necessarily get them into evidence. And maybe summarize what he thinks they're going to say, but don't give them to me to read until they become exhibits.
Thanks, Justice Jennings. Now we'll have the segment which will be the examination and cross-examination of the wife, Mrs. Doe. The examination in chief will be Ricki Harris, followed immediately by the cross-examination by Gary Joseph. So we can roll now.
Yes, Ms. Harris, you were examining?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mrs. Doe. Now, prior to the break yesterday, we reviewed the history of your marriage, some background with respect to your formal education and your work history. And you told us that you haven't been employed outside of the home for some 19 years. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Do you have any sources of income independent of your husband?
No, I do not.
All right. Where has your family resided, Mrs. Doe, throughout the marriage?
In Leamington?
And that's where you're currently residing?
Yes.
All right. And are you living in the matrimonial home?
Yes, we are.
And who are you residing there with at the present time?
Our 3 children?
All right. Now, we also briefly considered yesterday your financial statement, which you've identified. Your Honor, you'll find that at tab 4 of your exhibit brief.
Thank you.
And Mrs. Doe, just quickly looking at the statement that you have filed, and we'll go through this in more detail.
Yes.
You'll agree with me that you have indicated that you have expenses for yourself and the children of some $8,000 per month?
That's correct.
All right. Now, we also briefly discussed yesterday your husband's work history. And you've indicated in your claim that your husband's income is substantially greater than what he represents. What personal knowledge, if any, do you have with respect to your husband's income?
Just our lifestyle would have indicated that we had substantially more than has been indicated, and conversations that I've overheard. Our lifestyle was such that it would have been difficult for us to maintain it at the level of which his income tax or his financial statements say.
Well, when you talk about lifestyle, can you give us some indication as to what you mean by the lifestyle being indicative of greater income?
We had some wonderful holidays during our whole marriage. We would go on at least 2 holidays a year, one with our children, and do things like Disney World with them. We would travel, my husband and I, to places like the Bahamas, the Caymans ourselves. I would get some lovely gifts from my husband. We would entertain. We ate out frequently.
All right. And do you have any knowledge of what kind of monthly expenses were being incurred for the family while you were together?
No, I don't. My husband dealt with our finances.
All right. And were you ever aware of any income sources that your husband might have had outside of his regular employment income?
Well, we would talk about, I would overhear conversations where we would sometimes, more or less through his business, have contacts. For instance, being a chartered accountant, he would hear about investments that he could make and things like this. So I would overhear these kinds of conversations. We also sometimes, instead of charging his clients, he would have other things that he would be able to get. He had golf clubs, and there was a jeweler he had done some work with, and I was able to get a couple of lovely presents.
All right. And have you seen any changes in your husband's lifestyle since the time of your separation?
Other than he's living with his girlfriend, and they have a lovely home that they're living in right now.
And so have you seen any changes then in his lifestyle?
None whatsoever, other than he seems to be able to afford his lifestyle with her.
All right. Now, I would like to, for a moment, turn to your children. You have 3 children, is that correct?
Yes, we do.
All right. And your eldest child is Amanda?
Yes,
How old is Amanda?
18.
And what is the status of Amanda's schooling?
She is going to be entering her first year of university at Queen's. She's been accepted.
All right. And what kind of student has Amanda been historically?
She's been a great student. She works very hard. She's quite driven, and so she does very well.
And what program will she be entering at Queen's in the fall?
She will be going into a general BA course.
And I take it then you've had some discussions with Amanda about her plans for the fall when she attends Queen's?
Yes, she's very excited about it.
And what plans, if any, then has she made with respect to her accommodation? Where will she be living?
Well, we've actually had a long discussion about that. Amanda certainly is aware of our financial situation right now. And she's the kind of kid that really is concerned about, always has been, about our the money situation and such. So we've looked at residence and apartments and decided that she actually thought it would be a lot less expensive, and we've done some analysis. She's going to share an apartment with a friend.
All right. And have you discussed or considered how frequently, in light of the fact that she'll be attending university away from home, how frequently she'll be coming home?
Certainly a lot less than I would like, and certainly our other 2 children. She probably will come home maybe, if we can, 5 times a year. During the year. We'll try over the long weekends, or certainly during a holiday period.
Oh. Now, you have prepared an estimate of the costs associated with Amanda's attendance at school in the fall?
Yes.
And I'd like to just have you review. Now, you'll find this document as Schedule A to the witness's financial statement.
Thank you.
First of all, can you tell the court, Mrs. Doe, the source of information that you relied upon in arriving at these expenditures?
Yes, we were able to, from brochures that we had looked at, from other people that we had talked to about the costs. Amanda's been on the phone quite frequently with a couple of the people at the school to talk to them to get some costs, and so that's where we've done this.
All right. And I noticed that one of the expenses noted on this schedule is an expenditure for a computer.
Yes.
Can you tell the court what that's about?
Yes, absolutely. We have a computer now, actually, that the 3 children are using. In university, though, it's really important that Amanda be able to type up her reports and to hand them in. One of the requirements is to have that. So we actually went out and costed some computers, and it's a pretty basic computer with a small printer, but we couldn't give her the one at home because still my other 2 children need that one.
All right. And so your estimate for Amanda's expenditures while she's in attendance at school away from home will be approximately $14,000 for the year, is that right?
I think that's probably close. There'll be more, but that's what we think that we need, yes.
All right. And I note that on this schedule, you've not included any of her expenditures for clothing or her grooming costs, entertainment expenses of that type?
That's correct. That's something that I know that we'll just have to cover.
And how are you proposing that those expenses for Amanda be maintained?
Those will be something that I will give her out of my the money that I receive that we'll just have. she also has some money put away, and she's prepared quite to use some of that as well.
All right. Have you had any discussions with your husband, and have you and Amanda had any discussions with your husband with respect to Amanda's plans for the fall?
Yes, well, we have had that.
All right, and he's in agreement with her attendance at Queen's?
Yes, he is.
All right. And what will Amanda be doing this summer, Mrs. Doe?
Well, this will be probably her first summer, but what we'd like is for her not to have anything but other to spend time with her family. We need to find an apartment, so we are going to travel and take the other two kids with us and look so that they can see where their sister's going to be living. They're a little nervous about her being away. And we're hoping to spend some time with her grandmother. Again, it's kind of like she's leaving home, and I think she's having a little bit of a hard time, and we certainly are.
All right. And is there any expectation that Amanda will be working throughout the school year while she's in attendance at Queen's?
No, there is not.
And why is that?
Amanda's going to have a tough time adjusting. She's always lived at home. She's going to be very far away. It's really important that Amanda spend her time going ahead and studying and maintaining good marks. She is very driven. It's important to her to do well. It's a new curriculum. All of a sudden, she's going to be in a class with 500 other people, something she's not used to. She's used to a small class setting and one-on-one with teachers, and so it's going to be quite an adjustment, and certainly I feel that it's important that for this year that she just concentrate on her studies and maintain those marks so that she feels good about what she's doing and being away and starting to feel her independence.
All right, and so you've asked in your claim that your husband be required to contribute to Amanda's expenses in accordance with the child support guidelines, is
Yes.
that right? And in addition, you are asking that he then contribute to those expenses that you've noted on Schedule A?
Yes,
And that would be in proportion to your incomes, is that right?
that's correct.
All right. And you appreciate then that you'll be contributing to some of those extra expenses as well from your income?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Could we then turn to your next child, Jason?
Yes,
How old is Jason?
14.
Okay. And where is Jason residing?
With me.
And what is his present school status?
He is in
Grade 8?
grade 8.
Yes.
He is in grade 8, and he also does very well in school.
All right. And is Jason engaged in any extracurricular activities?
Yes, he is.
And what does he do?
He's a hockey player.
He's a
That's
hockey.
his main activity. He does play basketball and other things, but his main love is hockey.
And how long has he been involved in hockey as an extra activity?
Probably since he's been about 5.
All right. And where does he currently play?
In Leamington, he's playing on a AAA team currently, and competitive, and travels a lot.
Has he shown any particular aptitude in the hockey?
Absolutely, he has.
He has. And with what frequency is he playing? That is, how often during the course of the week would he play a game?
Oh, he's probably playing 3 to 4 times a week.
And he also is involved, you said, in competitive hockey, so he attends tournaments?
Yes, he does.
All right. And are any of those tournaments out of town?
Oh, a lot of them are because they play kids from other areas.
And who generally is involved in that activity with Jason?
His father.
Okay. And is this an activity that both you and your husband have supported?
Yes,
with
it
Jason?
is. Yes, it is.
And do you have any knowledge of what Jason's future plans are with respect to the hockey?
He'd like to be an NHL hockey player.
Let me then ask you, if I can, Mrs. Doe, you again have prepared a schedule of the expenses associated with Jason's hockey,
Yes.
and that document is Schedule B, Your Honor, to the financial.
Yes, I have it before me, thanks.
And is that schedule of expenditures that you've prepared, Mrs. Doe, an accurate reflection of Jason's current expenses for his hockey activities?
Yes, it is.
But just ask about the one item that you've noted on the schedule called training camp, 2 weeks. What is
Yes.
that about?
Jason would like to take, and we have encouraged him to learn to skate quickly, and it's called one-on-one skating, and basically what it is, it's to teach him to speed skate and to be really quick.
And is he engaged in that? Have you registered him in that program?
Yes, I have.
All right. And again, is this an expenditure that your husband has supported from the time that Jason began his hockey?
Yes, it is.
And has he supported it since the separation as well?
Yes, he has.
I'd
Thank you.
really be more assisted if I could get the evidence from the witness, Ms. Harris.
Can we then turn perhaps to Samantha?
Yes.
How old is Samantha?
She is 8.
And
Sorry, 10.
is,
Sorry, 10.
she's 10?
Yeah.
And is Samantha involved in any particular activities
Yes,
outside
she
of her
is.
school?
Yes, she is.
And what does she do?
She dances. She takes jazz and ballet. She also is in Girl Guides, and she also has been skating.
All right. And with respect to her dancing, where is she currently enrolled in a program for that?
She is enrolled at the program at the school of dance, Academy of Dance.
All right. How long has Samantha been dancing?
5 years.
And how many classes is she taking at the present time?
3 classes a week.
I'm sorry, did you tell me 5 years?
Yes, since she's been 5. She's been dancing.
I thought you told me she was 8. Did I make a mistake?
Sorry, I said 10. I was thinking of my son who was in grade 8 and...
Okay, I was worried about a 3-year-old ballet dancer,
Yeah.
but anyway, go ahead.
All right. And does she have any plans with respect to any changes that she will be making in her dance program in the coming year?
Yes, she would like to take dance, more ballet dancing classes. She really loves ballet, and it's something that she's only started a year ago, but she's really very fond of it.
All right. And in your view, is this an important activity for Samantha to continue?
Yes, it is.
Exact, Your Honor. These
All
are
right.
leading questions. I've let them go, but this is really leading on a crucial issue.
Well, I think, Your Honor, that the evidence of the witness as to the, she can certainly give an opinion as to the,
It is, but the way you put the
Importance.
question, you formed the answer you want, and you've asked her to agree with you. I mean, I know what the answer is going to be because you've spent some time on it, but try and get it from her rather than yourself.
all right. Well, before we go on to the importance of it, can I ask you then to first look at Schedule C?
Yes.
Which is the document where summarizing the current expenses for Samantha's activities. Is that an accurate representation of the current expenditures?
Yes, it is.
And just for clarification, does that include, Mrs. Doe, the proposed cost for her additional classes if she is enrolled next year?
Yes, it is.
All right. Does Samantha visit with her father on a regular basis?
Yes, she does.
And does Jason?
Jason spends quite a bit of time with him, yes.
Yes. How frequently do the children see their father?
Jason sees his father more than certainly the other 2 children. He doesn't have a lot of time, given the fact that he spends so much time with Jason and a lot of free time to spend with the others. So Samantha is seeing him every other weekend right now.
All right. And who principally then partakes in Samantha's activities with the dancing?
I do.
Now, have we then covered all of the specific activities that your children are currently engaged in?
Yes, I think the only extra thing then Samantha would be that she does is in the competition. That would certainly be a little bit of traveling and everything, and but I think other than that, it's pretty much covered.
All right. Perhaps, Your Honor, this might be an appropriate time, if I might ask to take a short break. We're going to begin another topic at this point.
Yes, very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Doe, I understand that during the marriage, you were the housewife. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And you did not work outside the home.
No, I did not.
Your husband, who is a chartered accountant, he controlled the family finances.
Yes, that's correct.
He would pay the bills every month.
Yes,
He would make the investments.
yes.
And basically, he didn't involve you in that process at all.
No, he did not.
In fact, at times he told you he didn't want you involved in that process, correct?
That is correct.
So you really had no personal knowledge whatsoever of his finances.
Other than what I've overheard.
You never saw his tax returns, did you?
No, I did not.
He did your tax return.
That's correct.
Put it in front of you, told you to sign it.
Yes.
You never saw his bank accounts?
Correct.
Right? Never saw any statements of investments?
No, did
Joseph,
not.
I'm really having trouble keeping up.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, really any information that you're giving to this court today with respect to your husband's finances is based largely on speculation, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Now, with respect to your daughter, Amanda, let me first ask you, you have a university degree, do you not?
Yes, I do.
And of course, your husband does.
Yes, he does.
And I understand that your husband paid his own way through university by working. Did he not?
Yes, he did.
I understand that you paid your own way through university by working.
Yes, that's true.
I understand from my client that approximately 2 to 3 years ago, Amanda approached you and your husband and asked if she could get a part-time job. Isn't that true?
Yes, it is.
And to her credit, she quickly found a job at the dry cleaning store in Leamington. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
And she was really quite enthusiastic about that job.
Yes, she was.
And as the years went by, she began working more and more at the dry cleaning store. Isn't that so?
Yes, it is.
In her last year of high school, she worked 3 evenings per week, plus every Saturday. Isn't that true?
That is true. It's something we weren't happy with, though.
Right. I understand from my client that you spoke to Amanda about it, but she insisted that she could maintain her grades and keep her job. Isn't that true?
Yes, it is true.
And she did so, and to her credit, her last year of high school was by far her best year of the high school process. Isn't that true?
That's because of the extra tutoring that we had gotten for her.
Well, I understand there was some extra tutoring, but overall, she finished with honors and graduated near the top of her class, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
I'm sure you were very proud of her, as my client was.
Very proud of her.
Now, as Amanda began working more at the dry cleaning store, she began accumulating some money from her paychecks, correct?
Yes, that's true.
And she began to buy her own clothing, right?
Yes.
And pay for her entertainment on weekends. Right?
Yes, she would.
I understand she liked to go to concerts and she would buy her own tickets.
Yes, she would do that.
And she opened her own bank account.
Yes, she did. We encouraged her to do that.
Right. And she saved some money from her pay.
Yes, she did.
And I understand from my client that she has saved approximately $3,000 in her bank account now.
Yes, she has.
I also understand from my client that there were discussions with Amanda, and Amanda had indicated that she would wish to pay for some of her own expenses at university. Isn't that true?
There was a discussion of such that took place a couple of years ago, but that was before this situation arose.
Right. But I understand that there's also been some discussions between you and your husband, or former husband, and between Amanda, subsequent to the separation, about her responsibilities with respect to her post-secondary school education.
There have been many.
Yes. And you've both pointed out, both jointly and individually to Amanda, that you each paid for your own education in its entirety. Correct?
Yes.
Before the separation, both you and your husband jointly made it very clear to Amanda that you expected her to assume some responsibility for her educational costs. Isn't that true?
I think some would be correct.
Yes.
Not all.
Well, there weren't specifics. No one was anticipating this breakup, but at the time there was the discussion and there was the indication to Amanda, correct?
Yes.
And again, a credit to Amanda, she was enthusiastic about that responsibility, assuming that responsibility. Isn't that true?
At that point in time, she was.
Has Amanda applied for any student loans?
Yes, she has.
And what about student grants?
Yes, she has.
And we would expect that should she be accorded a loan or a grant, that would be used to pay for her post-secondary school education, or at least a part of it. Isn't that true?
I think it's true, but I think given her father's income, we might not get anything.
Well, you don't know what his income is. We agreed earlier that that was just pure speculation on your part. True?
True?
Now, I understand that Amanda has a very dear aunt living in Windsor, Ethel. Isn't that so?
Yes, she does.
And unfortunately, just a couple of months ago, Ethel's husband died. True?
Yes.
And of course, that affected the family, and you traveled to to Queens, to Kingston. You traveled to Kingston and grieved with Ethel.
Yes, we did.
Ethel's home is almost directly across from the Queens campus in Kingston, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And my client tells me that Ethel has approached both himself and you and proposed that her home would be a wonderful residence for Amanda during the school term. You agree with me?
Yes, I do.
And there's certainly no question that that house has loads of room for Amanda.
I think there are other circumstances, though, that would not make this the right
I
decision.
asked you, witness, about the room in the home. Please
Yes.
be responsive. It has loads of room, does it not?
Yes, it does.
And Amanda has, in fact, spent many weekends or weeks during the summer visiting Ethel and staying in that home in the past. True?
With our other children, yes.
And in fact, madam, it's you who is encouraging Amanda to find a separate residence. Isn't that true?
No, that's not true.
I suggest to you that you had proposed to Amanda that she find an apartment off campus.
Amanda and I had discussed this. She is concerned because her father is pressuring her to stay with her aunt. Her aunt is not well.
How do you know, madam, he's pressuring her?
Amanda has told me,
You have no personal knowledge of that.
other than what my daughter has told me.
Have you asked your husband about it?
No, I have not.
All right, continue.
She is not well. Amanda is certainly at this stage does not need to be someone's nursemaid. We are concerned also about her having some independence. The idea of leaving home and starting out is to gain some independence and to feel good about herself, and concerned about the time that she would spend here, and this wouldn't happen to her. It's that time that she's ready to go.
Well,
Sorry, did you say feel good about herself?
Feel good about herself.
Does she not feel good about herself?
Well, I think growing independent and knowing that she can take care of herself instead of, again, being with a family member taking care of her.
I see. Thank you.
well, she will be living away from home,
Yes.
correct? And she will be attending university for the first time.
Yes.
Won't this be a perfect transition for her to stay with Aunt Ethel, at least initially?
Again, it's someone who she knows, and someone who, again, she'd be under someone else's rules and regulations. It's time that Amanda learned to be responsible, and she is responsible, but really had to count on herself.
You indicated to my friend that Amanda would be traveling back home to Leamington approximately 5 times during the
Yes.
school year?
Yes.
And that, of course, would mean that the majority of her time would be spent at Queen's University, correct?
Yes, it is.
And in that sense, then, you won't have the day-to-day expenses that one would normally have for a child living in your own home while Amanda is away at university. Isn't that true?
There would be a little bit of a savings.
For example, you won't have to buy groceries, food for her. True?
That's true.
You won't have to buy her day-to-day toiletries, things of that nature. True?
I would be giving her money to buy them for her in Kingston.
You won't have what is often a situation where the child is coming to the parent on a regular basis asking for money for the weekend or things of that nature, because Amanda will be away from home, correct?
Yes, that is true.
And when you go out to things like dinners and movies, Amanda just won't be there, and of course you won't have that expense for her, correct?
I'll have the traveling expense that I'll take for
No, I'm not
myself.
asking you about that, madam. I'm asking you about your situation at home with Amanda at university. And I suggested to you that you won't have those expenses that one normally would have, for instance, taking the children out for dinner, taking the children to a movie, things of that nature.
I'll be taking the children to Kingston to visit her, so we will have added expenses.
We've heard about that, but please answer my question for the third
Well, I
time.
think that answered the question.
Thank you. Let me ask you about your son, Jason. I suggest to you that Jason During your cohabitation with your husband, Jason never attended any special hockey programs. Isn't that true?
What do you mean by special programs?
I know he played hockey,
Yes.
but he didn't go to things like the one-on-one skating camp that you proposed. Isn't that true?
That is true.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness, please?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. A scouting report as prepared by the OHL, the Ontario Hockey League. Can you turn to page 3, please? Do you see the reference on that page to Jason, your son?
Yes, I do.
And there's a summary of his abilities, correct?
Yes, there is.
And there's some highlights of his hockey career, correct?
Yes.
Do you see on the second paragraph of that summary, will you agree with me that Jason did not make the league all-star team last year?
Yes, I agree.
Would you agree with me that he was not chosen for any special tournaments? I'm
Yes.
not talking about the regular tournaments during the season, but the summary indicates that he was not chosen for any special tournaments.
Yes.
Would you agree with me that the report discusses his physical attributes?
Yes, it does.
Okay. How tall is Jason?
5'7",
And how much does he weigh?
130 pounds.
Are you sure, madam? Take a look at the report, please. Thought it said he was lighter than that.
No, I think the report is incorrect.
Report says he's 110 pounds.
I think that's incorrect. That was taken last year.
It says 110. Below that summary, can you read what it has to say about Jason from a physical sense?
It talks about him being small for,
Yes, small for his age.
yes,
Do you see the word slight frame?
yes, he's built like his mother.
Is that opinion evidence?
I think so.
Madam, I understand that your husband is very involved in the hockey program with Jason.
Yes, he is.
In fact, your husband was a junior hockey player himself.
Yes, he was.
Your husband never made it to the junior A level, correct?
Correct.
And really was just made it to the junior B level, correct?
Yes,
And I understand that your husband is not overly tall, correct?
yes,
He's about 5'7" as well.
yes. Much heavier, though.
Well, he's become heavier. But when he was a young man, he was quite slight, correct?
I don't know that I would say slight, but
He's always complained that he could have done better in hockey had he been a bigger man, correct?
I don't know that he was just talking about being bigger. He also talked about being faster.
I realize that, but he had always complained that his career was stunted by the fact that he was quite short and quite light, correct?
Yes,
And he's always bemoaned to you the fact that even though Jason's very interested in a hockey career, hockey really is a big man sport these days. He said that to you, hasn't he?
I think there's an added. He has talked about the fact that you have to be fast.
Appreciate that. Your husband has been taking Jason to his hockey games on a regular basis, correct?
Yes, he has.
And just let me step back from there for a moment and talk to you about the parenting program that you and your husband have put into place since separation. The formal program, the written program, has been that he would have the children, particularly Jason, from Friday afternoon to Monday morning every other weekend. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And in addition, he would have the children at least 2 evenings per week, correct?
Yes,
And of course, he would have additional holiday time, but that was the basic structure.
yes.
Over and above the basic structure, I suggest to you that your husband has had the children more time than that, correct?
Jason, not the other two.
All right, well, then let's deal with Jason. Your husband has had Jason at least 2 evenings per week, correct?
That's correct.
During the hockey season, which I
Mr.
understand...
Joseph, I'm not sure I'm following. When you say evenings, are you referring to overnights or periods of time after dinner?
I was just going to get to that, Your Honor.
Thank you.
during the hockey season, when Jason plays hockey, and the hockey season runs from the end of August to the end of May, is that
Yes.
correct? Jason has been staying overnight with his father.
He has been, yes, he has, because they've got to get up very early in the morning.
So he would be going to his hockey games or practices, and then he would be staying overnight.
Yes,
And I believe you mentioned to my friend, Ms. Harris, that hockey was 3 to 4 nights per week. Is that right?
yes, that is.
And so during the hockey season, Jason has been spending 3 to 4 nights with his father overnight, correct?
Yes,
Now, in addition to that, you mentioned tournaments. And those tournaments happen at least once a month. These are the regular season tournaments, correct?
that's correct.
Towards the end of the season, in April and May, they can be at least twice a month, correct?
Yes,
And my client tells me that he takes Jason to all of the tournaments. Is that correct? I'm not saying you don't go, but he takes Jason.
most of the time.
On occasion, you attend.
I'd like to attend more, but it becomes difficult.
I know you have the other 2 children.
It's not only that, his girlfriend's there, so it makes
All
it
right.
uncomfortable for Jason.
Fair enough. He takes Jason to all of the tournaments.
Yes,
And you and your husband have reached an accord that because he's taking Jason on the weekends, it doesn't matter, for the tournaments, pardon me, it hasn't mattered whether the tournaments fall on your husband's weekends with the children, correct?
yes, that is correct.
So what has developed is that your husband would have, and insists upon having the children, his 2 formal weekends every month, correct?
He insists on having Jason. There are times when he's not taking the other 2 children.
Just stay with me for a moment. His regular scheduled weekends
Yes,
that form part of the formal agreement that you have, he always takes the children, all 3 of them. Sometimes Amanda's not available because of her work schedule.
yes,
But in addition to that, he has Jason on weekends for tournaments, even if they are not your husband's formal weekends.
that is correct.
Your husband has told me, and he will testify to this, that this has meant that he has the children, generally 3, sometimes 2, on his formal 2 weekends every month. And in addition to that, he usually has Jason at least 1 more weekend per month, correct?
Yes, it is.
So that in summary, Jason is basically spending 3 full weekends a month, at least, with his father,
During the hockey season,
which runs from the end of August to the end of May.
yes,
And then during the summertime, the practice has been, as my client tells me, that he would have the children for a full month. You take them in July, he takes them in August, correct?
that is the way we had talked about it.
Well, no, let's back up. I'm not talking about talking about it. I'm talking about the formal agreement. You don't need to review that document again, do we?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Ms. Van Melle, your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Doe has taken the stand and will do his examination in chief.
Can I ask Ricki and Gary to come up just to make a couple of comments? We didn't appreciate the difficulty with the microphone on Ricki, so when Ricki left the podium, as you saw, she wasn't mic'd separately, and so it didn't pick up the sound. So that's our fault, certainly not Ricki's. The other thing I want to mention is the fact that the wife was Sharon Mitchell, who is the chief operating officer at Gowling. She actually coincidentally has 2 children who are roughly the ages of Jason and Amanda. Let me ask Ricki first, and you appreciate that this was an extract of an examination. Obviously, it may have gone on for a bit longer, but in terms of what we were looking for in respect of the child support aspect, obviously this was extracted. Ricki, did you feel that you got from Mrs. Doe what you were looking to get?
I probably would have. In terms of the special expenses, I think for the most part I was able to cover what I would want to have gotten from her. I probably would have dealt in examination in chief with some of the issues around the argument that the husband's lawyer was dealing with in cross-examination about the 40% of time that the father would have been spending with the children. I would have gone into that probably in some detail, and perhaps have even covered some of the issues that he dealt with on cross-examination about where Amanda was going to live when she went away to university, and the whole issue about staying at the aunt's. My objective in examination in chief generally is to have the witness tell the story, and to ensure in telling the story that they cover all of the sort of the gamut of legal issues that need to be covered as well. And so certainly in terms of the special expenses, I wanted to make sure that she gave evidence about historically that these were expenses that the children had been incurring, or that had been incurred on the children's behalf, that they were consistent with what they had been accustomed to, that they were affordable expenses, and that they were in the children's best interests. Some of the gaps that were left in chief I would not normally have left, except that there were certain areas that we wanted to make sure were covered in cross-examination, and so they were left that way.
Were you satisfied with the demeanor of the witness in the sense that that this is a person that the judge would find credible and would like?
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, she was certainly prepared as any witness would have been. I think she did a very admirable job given the fact that she wasn't actually involved in a case. But certainly I think any witness who is properly and adequately prepared in advance of their attendance should be able to give the same kind of demeanor as this witness did. And I thought she covered it very well, actually.
You were chided at one point for asking leading questions. Did that trouble you?
It did, although I know I tend to do that in examination chief, quite frankly, and it's one of those things that's hard to get away from. You know the story, you know it so well, that you tend to take your client through it probably at least I do, too directly. So I know that that's something that I should be criticized for, and I'm sure that Justice Jennings will criticize me for.
I was at a panel in Ottawa a few weeks ago, and a judge there said that she was chiding a counsel for asking leading questions, and the counsel said, I wasn't asking leading questions. The witness can answer yes or no. So.
The only one other thing I will say is that there was at one point in time where I think we were talking about the expenses for the youngest child, and I was leading her in terms of her evidence about why it was in the child's best interest. And that, I dropped it at that point, and that's certainly something that I would have and should have gone back to and addressed in a different fashion, and sort of rephrased my questions to ensure that the evidence came out, but it came out from the witness as opposed to me.
Let me turn to Gary for a minute. Were you satisfied with the way that you, well, no, let me start with a better question. What were you trying to achieve and elicit in the cross-examination? Let me ask that.
Well, there were so many, thanks. There were so many issues, to be dealt with through this witness. 3 children, 3 different circumstances, so many guideline issues that came up that I wanted to approach this witness in a different way with respect to each of the children. She was a very good witness. She was a very strong witness. She had a very strong personality. I don't know if it came through as well on the film.
Did you notice that her demeanor changed? Could you see the real change in the demeanor from the examination chief to the cross-examination?
Yeah, she stiffened and she hardened up. And
if you watch it again, you'll see that. You'll see a real change in the witness's demeanor.
And she wasn't giving me that much in her responses. I was getting a lot of yes, no's, okay, correct. And that is partially my own style. And, watching it, just watching myself, I learned from that. But I wanted to first of all establish that what this witness had said and would be saying about the income of the husband was speculation, that she really didn't know. Now, of course, the wife's counsel would deal with that more extensively through other witnesses, but she was speculating. She didn't know whether he made $100,000 a year, whether he made $400,000 a year. All she really knew was that they lived a very nice lifestyle. When we moved into Amanda, again, a host of guideline issues just come, jumping out at you. Are these expenses necessary? Are they reasonable? What was the pattern of spending during the marriage? What discussions had taken place with respect to contribution to education? Should she be receiving a table amount of support while the child was attending school, on top of a contribution to educational expenses. What should be the child's contribution to educational expenses?
Aren't some of those double-edged swords in a way, like the contribution issue? Isn't that a really, I mean, you've got a guy who you want to portray as a nice guy, your client, and getting into the issue of whether Amanda should be working this summer and through the school year. Isn't that a bit of a double-edged sword?
I agree, and I think so. And again, watching the tape, I can see that, and thinking that some of these things maybe can work against the husband. But it's largely new territory. The guidelines are fairly new. I looked at some of the cases before examining her, the Nadeau and Mitchell case, Justice Jarvis. There's the I think it's Van Winsberg case. I don't think the courts react negatively to the suggestion that an adult child, and remember, we are dealing with an adult child. I don't think that the judges, and Justice Jennings will help us here, I don't think they react negatively to the thought that a child of this age can contribute to his or her educational costs.
If I can ask you about Jason for a minute. Again, in a way, you have the father here running down his child in the sense of being a kind of discouragement that this isn't really a kid who has any real potential. Maybe, obviously, the child isn't there, but eventually the child hears about this. Isn't that a worry for you?
Yes, yeah, but we also have a father who's very, very supportive of this activity. This is not a father who was just dropping the child at the rink or not showing up. The evidence was, and continued to be throughout the trial, that this gentleman was very, very much involved in encouraging his child to be the best he could be, to participate in hockey, tournaments, you name it, the father was there. So I think that blunted that concern totally.
Did you think that you were making any headway on what clearly you were aiming for in the 40% issue? Do you think you were really going to persuade the trial judge that was going to make a serious difference in what he should pay?
Not on that evidence that I achieved in cross-examination, no.
Just finally, were you satisfied with the control that you were exercising over the witness? Did you feel you had a good sense of keeping the witness responsive to what you were asking?
Well, I thought I view these exchanges sometimes in the context of a battle between counsel and the witness, and I thought that she counterpunched very well a couple of times, and bloodied my nose a couple of times when I waded in. So no, I didn't have as much control over the witness as I would have liked to, and I let her get away from me a couple of times and didn't clean it up as I might have done.
Before I turn to Justice Jennings, I asked Gary before we did this to ask Justice Jennings in the tape. You saw that he asked if he could approach the witness. I only did that because in the same panel I was on in Ottawa, one of the judges said that she would never let counsel approach the witness without asking permission, so I thought I'd throw that in for those of you out of town. Justice Jennings, maybe you could give us your thoughts on both of the examinations.
Well, let me start again with the banal. An examination in chief, I think, is at least as difficult as a cross-examination. But it is apparent to me that view isn't widely held. I'm sure you've all come across that style of examination in chief where the first question is something like, why don't you tell us what it is that brought you to court today, or something like that, which is really bad. What you saw with Ricki Harris, I thought, was a superb examination in chief. What I want you to remember when you look at the tape, firstly, is watch her. Her head's up, she's got eye contact with her witness, and she looks really interested in what the witness is saying. It's almost as if, I haven't heard this before, gee, tell me that again. And that's an art, which she has obviously mastered. It settles the witness down. The witness was led gently, and I don't mean leading objectionably, I mean was persuaded to tell her story in bite-sized segments, but for one point where the witness got away from me a bit, I think. But the story came out in a fresh and attractive way, and I have nothing but good things to say about her manner in examining. Don't look down at notes. If you're going to write out all your questions, and I don't think you should, but if you want to write out all your questions, don't look like you're reading them and then pop your head up the next time there's a break in the testimony to read out yet another question. It'll unsettle the witness, and it breaks the flow. It doesn't look like this is a witness telling a story. It looks like a prepared set piece.
Did you see that examination as a kind of dialogue between...
Yeah, I thought this was a conversation between the witness and the advocate, and I thought it was superb.
Does that speak to you, that conversational way of going about it?
Yes, I'm very much taken by it. The other thing I was going to say to you is I thought that Ms. Harris did a really good job on locking the father into supporting the university education, supporting the hockey, and it was going to be hard for Gary to attack that when it came time. Turned out it wasn't hard, but it was going to be hard. She got a commitment out of the wife that the father was actively supporting these things prior to separation. She did not spend any time going over the obvious and the budget. You didn't have the budget, but the budget was a very modest budget, and she let it speak for itself, which I thought was superb.
On Gary?
On the 29th of May, or whenever the heck it was we taped this thing, at the end of Ricky's examination in chief, I jotted down 2 notes to myself as to how I thought Joseph might want to start his cross, how I would have done it if I'd been in his shoes, because everybody should have a game plan when you start a cross. And what I wrote down was, Amanda, 1, but all you can do is cross on the husband's ability to pay and Amanda's ability to contribute. And what does Joseph do? He goes right to those 2 points. That tape is another tape that you want to read. I think Gary shortchanged himself. He exercised marvelous control, I thought, except for perhaps 1 or 2 minor areas, over his witness, and he did that by asking very short questions, 1 subject per question, and getting the witness to agree with his statement. So when I read my notes back to myself now, having watched the tape again, what I'm really writing down is what Joseph's telling me, because it's the witness is simply saying yes or no most of the time, and if you can get a witness to do that, you are home free because you're supplying the testimony. I thought his control throughout was very, very good. I think little tips like when the witness began to get away, now wait a minute, just the line I've got was just stay with me for a moment and then you repeat the question. That's marvelous control. I thought from a subjective point of view, Gary got into dangerous ground when he started to talk about, well, yeah, but if she comes home, you don't have to buy a box of cornflakes that week or something like that. It struck me as being, you know, you got mega income here, getting a little nickel and dime, and it took away from the effectiveness of the rest of the cross.
Just on that point, before you go on, did it speak to you the 2 issues about Amanda, that she could contribute to her own expenses and living with Aunt Ethel? Did either of those ring any bells?
Oh, I thought he handled those extraordinarily well. But what he did was the subtle way he did it was getting an admission that the husband worked when he was at college to put himself through. That's one question. Second follow-up question is, and you worked at college to put yourself through. Much more effective, by the way, than saying the 2 of you worked, didn't you, to put yourself through college. You build, and he had that locked in, and it led from there to the fact that Amanda certainly in this family would have been expected to make that contribution.
Well, let me ask a supplementary just to that. On a substantive basis rather than a kind of advocacy basis, having asked those questions and elicited those answers, does that, as the trial judge, speak to you that there may be something in this that you might expect Amanda to contribute to her own education? And
well, he did better than that. He led me to believe that Amanda, that was one of Amanda's goals in life. This is what she wanted to do. So absolutely. I mean, that was a done issue. The other area where I thought he skated on awfully thin ice, I think the questions had to be asked, but it's risky, and he did it about as gently as you could, is bringing out that you got a 5'7", 85-pound weakling who's not a very good hockey player. Sounds like the dad is not very supportive of this kid, and that I began to think, whoa, wait a minute now, I thought they had a great relationship. Why are we bringing all this out? If you're going to be asked to pay, what was the cost, $2,000 or something?
Yeah, it was about
$2,000 for speed skating. Maybe you have to go into it, but it's risky, really risky, because you want to paint your client as being Mr. Nice Guy. And the last thing I want to say about that cross was that it was a classic example of how to cross-examine without being cross. He stayed behind the podium, never got cross, never got mad, never got exercised, but he exercised control. And I commend both of those tapes to you for classic examples of chief and cross.
Just on the matter of the tapes, you all have the tapes, and occasionally, and I commend this to your clients who are going to be maybe examined, even in examinations for discovery or cross-examinations, might very well profit by watching these tapes to see how this is done in real life. Anyway.